This unique new solo cruising canoe is fast and easy to paddle. Its sleek underwater lines are based on racing canoe designs. So is the radical tumble home in the paddle stroke area. The paddle stroke is close into the paddler's body, much like that in a solo racing canoe or in the bow or stern of a fine-lined tandem racer or cruiser. This makes for a powerful, efficient, and comfortable stroke. This canoe has 3 distinct zones or sections above the waterline. The flared, roomy stern section can receive a large No. 4 Duluth pack laid down flat. The flared bow section or zone can hold a large duffel bag or an upright food pack. These 2 zones allow a canoeist to balance the load fore and aft, and still leave room for some smaller packs near the bow and stern. The paddle stroke zone in the middle is pulled in close to the paddler's body and is smoothly fared into the bow and stern zones. Al Button, the designer and builder, doesn't have to reach out over the wide center of a more traditional canoe design. After racing for years, Al feels no need to be a canoeing purist and keep fighting crosswinds, the bane of the solo paddler's existence. A rudder totally eliminates the influence of wind on the canoe's direction. An added bonus is that it enables a paddler to use a simple forward stroke on one side for as long as he or she chooses to, and then switch to rest one group of muscles while paddling on the other side. Each paddle switch drips some water into the canoe, so less frequent switching keeps the canoe and the packs drier. The rudder helps to make quick turns to avoid rocks in our Midwestern boulder bed rapids. This canoe makes only a very little bow wave and a very small wake at a fast cruising speed. Unlike the extreme designed racing canoe, the new cruising canoe has no sharp edges near the waterline for waves to grab. The flared sections fore and aft provide good stability and recovery moment when the canoe leans over a few degrees, while the round bottom design can ride broadside through large boat wakes or large waves comfortably with a minimum of rolling. When the canoe slices through large waves, its fine entry line minimizes pitching, but the full bow zone above the normal waterline provides some lift to get the bow up, enough to clear those large waves rather than diving straight through them. Another design feature that Al learned from negative racing canoe experience is to put enough rocker in the bow to avoid picking up a mass of weeds or leaves from the water's surface. The deep, straight bow of a racing canoe would harvest amazing quantities of these weeds, while this canoe slides serenely over them. Likewise, the dreaded canoe-eating hippopotarocks that lurk 2 inches under the surface of Boundary Waters lakes, hiding in the glare of reflected sky or sun on the water, used to crunch violently into the deep bow of Al's heavily loaded racing canoe. This canoe can slide up onto them gently with only light scratching. Several beginners and canoeists unfamiliar with solo canoes have ventured out in this canoe and can control it well after just a few minutes on the water. Although it was originally designed for a large heavy paddler and heavy camping loads, smaller paddlers have commented that the canoe doesn't feel large or unwieldy as they paddle it. Kirsten, you don't weigh enough to break down through the surface tension.
Oh, really? Okay.
Softer
I mean, I can notice it certainly has a lot of wobble back and forth,
but if you can do
but
that,
it only goes so
That's
far.
right.
And
Exactly.
then,
Yeah,
It's going to take a whole lot more to wobble it. And I mean, you could see when I was out there, it wasn't wobbling that much.
Uh-uh.
So,
Why don't you pull the rudder up so it doesn't bang into the bottom?
okay.
In its first season of use, this canoe has proved to be very seaworthy on large windy lakes and on river rapids, surprisingly stable and comfortable on a long day's voyage, and capable of carrying a heavy load without wallowing. It has surpassed Al's expectations in all these respects. This design is the result of 40 years' experience in canoe tripping, camping, marathon canoe racing, and whitewater canoe racing. The designer, Allan Button, has taken boundary waters and river camping trips in this lightweight Winona Jensen J200 solo racing canoe for the past 14 years. The speed, ease of paddling, and light weight of the racing canoe is a big plus, but its narrow profile makes packing bulky gear very difficult, and its unforgiving instability and minimal volume has often made for nervous runs through rapids or across large windy lakes. Many ideas for the new design came out of these tense times, and finally, Al decided he was getting too old and cowardly for fighting wind, waves, and balance instead of enjoying the ride. Al could picture all of this in his head, but how to turn these ideas into a real canoe? Al used a computer-aided design or CAD program on a personal computer. This enabled him to optimize the underwater longitudinal profile for speed and to fare or blend the three zones into a smooth, functional, and hopefully visually pleasing profile. Using techniques he learned years ago in the Minnesota Canoe Association, Al printed a set of construction templates, 1/4 inch undersize, traced them onto particle board, cut them out with a bandsaw, and sanded them to finished size and shape. I've stacked them. He made cedar stem pieces to strengthen the bow and the stern, and mounted the templates onto a rigid wooden strongback, squaring them up precisely in all three dimensions to make a symmetrical skeleton. He then covered them with red cedar strips, 1/4 inch thick, 3/4 inch wide, edge gluing the strips to each other with Elmer's carpenter's glue, and temporarily nailing them into the templates and stapling them to their neighbors tightly to keep the joints reasonably tight while the glue set. In a few high-stress areas, he used small screws to make sure the strips didn't pull away from the templates until they were firmly held in place by well-set glue and neighboring strips. This process continued from the keel line outward and around toward the waterline. There the strips were marked parallel to the waterline and trimmed. Al continued stripping from the waterline toward the gunnel line, parallel to the waterline. Until finally, all the stripping was done on both sides. He then removed the thousands of staples and the hundreds of nails and screws. Then he planed down the high spots and sanded the strips to produce a smooth, well-fared surface with no high spots or hollows. Al has added the outside skin of fiber-reinforced resin and is now ready to do the same on the inside after having sanded it smooth. To keep this canoe light and strong, Al chose to use Kevlar cloth instead of the more usual fiberglass. Since Al is highly sensitive now to epoxy resins, he is using vinyl ester resin instead, which is nearly as strong and is tougher than the cheaper but more brittle polyester. He has carefully laid out the Kevlar cloth in the bottom of the canoe and then wets it out by brushing or squeegeeing the resin evenly until it wets all the fibers. This takes several coats as the resin shrinks into the fibers. Lightweight but stiff spruce gunnels are laminated by gluing and clamping to the templates to retain the design shape of the canoe. Then they are clamped and glued to the inside of the canoe shell and trimmed to a smooth beveled edge using a spoke shave. The canoe's shell forms the outer layer of the 3-layer laminated gunnel. Al then brushed on several more clear layers of vinyl ester resin so he could sand and polish the outer surface later. He mounted the canoe upside down on poles to varnish the inside and underside of the gunnels. Finally, Al sanded and polished the outside of the hull, added aluminum thwarts, a sliding pedestal tractor-style seat, and a rudder and foot pedal assembly of his own design to finish this 50-pound, 18 1/2 foot long cruising machine.